daughter than his sister. As someone with a sister 20 years his junior, I know exactly the feeling. While at Thomas Jefferson, Kubert became friends with Alvin Carl Hollingsworth Jr., who would later go on to be a successful artist in his own right. Their friendship was notable at the time, as Alvin was black, but the Kuberts, being Jewish, were used to discrimination. Thus, Joe was raised to be accepting of everyone of all color and creed. Hollingsworth would be the frequent guest at the Kuberts' home, where he got to enjoy Edith's cooking. Hollingsworth would even work with Joe from time to time, not being paid, but happy to just be published, as he was just 13. As a result, Hollingsworth would be one of the first black comic book artists in the medium. Joe Kubert continued to get steady work in comics, working for Harvey Comics on Speed number 29 in November 1943, producing 24 Black Cat stories, a character created by Al Gabriel that can be best described as a female Batman, thus much more skimpily dressed. She first appeared in Pocket Comics number 1 in August of 1941, which would also be the first comic Harvey ever produced. During Kubert's run at the Black Cat, he started to experiment with inking with brush over pen, which provided a more dynamic look, though Joe had not quite perfected his technique yet, having it look more watery at the time. However, it would ultimately lead to his trademark style with spotted blacks and heavy shadows. He even had his sister Ra's help, as they were both teenagers and he was closest to her. They would often go on double dates together, sneaking out to have shrimp and White Castle for non-kosher meals, as Joe was starting to rebel a little bit in his manner of speaking. In 1943, he was hired at National, the future DC, to work as an inker, working with Mort Meskin and Jack Kirby. He arrived just in time for Meskin, as editorial director Whitney Ellsworth had decreed he wanted DC's then ace artist to concentrate just on penciling, thus giving Kubert the job to ink another of the comic book's greats. It also helped with deadlines, as being both a penciler and an inker had put stress on Meskin's work. His first work was penciling and inking the 50-page Seven Soldiers of Victory story in Leading Comics number 8 in the fall of 1943, and soon Kubert was working on Vigilante for Action Comics number 66 in November of 1943, along with inking for Jack Kirby on his Newsboy Legion strips, though it's unknown precisely which ones he did. While at DC, he met legendary editor-in-chief Sheldon Mayer, who gave him a tryout on the Dr. Fate story for Justice Society of America in All-Star Comics number 21, the summer of 1944, that was written by Gardner Fox. Mayer was impressed by Kubert's art and decided to have him replace Sheldon Moldoff on the Hawkman, one of their more popular characters at the time. Hawkman first appeared in Flash Comics number 1 in January of 1940, created by Gardner Fox and Dennis Neville, telling the story of Carter Hall, a scientist and ancient weapons collector who discovers the nth metal, a substance that gives the user the ability to defy gravity. Crafting a costume with the metal in his belt buckle along with some wings so he could fly, Hall would become a costume crime fighter Hawkman, and soon joined by his assistant Shiera Sanders, who became Hawkgirl. While he never got a comic of his own, Hawkman would be a regular feature throughout several DC comics, along with being a founding member and chairman of the Justice Society of America, comic book's first superhero team. Sheldon Mayer had been unimpressed with Moldoff's work on the strip. It didn't help that many images were swipes from Alex Raymond's Flash Gordon. Joe Kubert worked on Hawkman in Big All-American Comic Book, a massive 128-page comic book that went for 25 cents an issue, with the story A Hot Time in the Old Town. Mayer was so impressed, he gave Kubert Hawkman full-time in Flash Comics and All-Star at $25 a page for penciling and inking, and all at the age of 18. This was a big time for Joe Kubert. With having just graduated high school that past June, Joe Kubert is now working for one of the comics' top companies and one of their more popular characters. Way to hit the ground running, Mr. Kubert. During this time, Joe Kubert's arts improved dramatically, while calling Sheldon Mayer his mentor, who rarely asked him to redraw his work, though he would point out where improvements were needed. While many other comic book artists would complain about Sheldon Mayer's outbursts, Joe Kubert never had to deal with that, apparently because he loved mentoring young artists. According to some, if he couldn't draw it himself, he would rather help someone else do it. Plus, Mayer probably sensed Kubert wouldn't take such a tantrum, as despite his young age, he was always quite confident in his abilities as an artist, something else Kubert would carry on throughout his entire career. Mayer did provide us plenty of good advice, particularly in studying human anatomy and constant practice. To paraphrase, Mayer said to draw 5,000 pictures from life so it stays in your head, then it just flows through you on the page. He also taught Kubert basic storytelling and sequential art. Mayer believed every artist should learn penciling, inking, and lettering, though not writing. Most of Joe Kubert's scripts for Hawkman were provided by Gardner Fox, as they started their own ongoing Hawkman series in Flash Comics number 62, with the story The Painter and the $100,000 in February of 1945. If one was to compare his art on Hawkman to his earlier run on Volton, you wouldn't believe it was the same person, as his art had proved so much. However, Kubert would claim it wasn't from innate ability, but from determination and practice. He generally believed anyone could be an artist with the right mindset. Joe Kubert would stay on until the comic ended in the late 1948. And he continued to use brush to ink his work, which also continued to improve, while he also did every other cover of the comic, where he truly shined. During his early tenure at DC, Joe Kubert would first work with Robert Knaier, along with fellow artist Irvin Hansen, in Star Comics number 37 on October 1947, which debuted the Injustice Society, the supervillain counterparts to the Injustice Society of America, comic books for a superhero team. Later, Kubert and Knaier would create Thorn in Flash Comics number 89 in November 1947, a villain to the Flash. While this was happening, Charles Gaines sold All American Comics in full to National/DC, and with the $500,000 check he received, used it to start up his educational comics, which would become the future EC Comics. As for Joe Kubert, he continued to work for DC, though now directly, and it will be a relationship that will last for a long time. World War II would affect the Kubert family, despite none of them having to serve, but the horrors of the Holocaust and what happened to their home country of Poland affected them personally. Osnabrück, their former hometown, was the target of Hitler's final solution. For Joe Kubert, it would translate in his comics work with the Golem in The Challenger No. 3 on the spring of 1946, which dramatized the plight of Jews in Nazi Germany. Written by Robert Bernstein, The Challenger was a magazine pledged to fighting racial injustice, and the story would be one of Kubert's first important stories, adapting the flashy folklore tale of the Golem, an artificial being summoned by Jews to protect them. Joe Kubert also returned to Hawkman in Flash Comics number 85 after an 8-month break, having left the series between issues 77 and 83, and All-Star from issues 31 to 32. Kubert also did work in Eerie number 1, Cowpuncher number 1 and 2, and Sensation Comics number 66. His art had truly improved to this point, as for Kubert, the main objective of any comic book artist is to be a storyteller, with details and backgrounds coming second. Something that's forgotten from time to time. Look at the early image artist. Kubert also became a true professional, no longer turning in his assignments late, something else that professionals still forget today. Once again, look at the early image artist. With his growing finances, Joe Kubert bought his first respectable car, a yellow 1946 Town & Country convertible, at his mother's insistence to replace his unlicensed, topless Model T he bought for a few $100 when he graduated from high school. Still serving as his family treasurer, Edo reportedly even picked it out for him. Joe Kubert's professional life also changed when his Sheldon Mayer retired in 1948 as National's editor-in-chief, to be replaced by Julie Swartz, his then storyteller at DC. Despite this job, Kubert said he didn't meet him until after his promotion. A fun note, Kubert liked to joke that he used to date Swartz's future wife, though he also admitted it was only just one date. Swartz would make him a better storyteller, as he was a reader over an artist, and as a result, ensured that the storytelling in the art was clear. With Joe Kubert's finances continuing to grow, he rented an apartment on Manhattan on Park Avenue, and at the age of 22 used it as an art studio for publishers like St. John's, sharing with fellow artists like Alex Toff, Harry Post, and Stan Drake. His plan was to deliver complete books at set prices to studios in exchange for a share of the profits. To ensure this, Kubert set up a contractual relationship with Archie St. John, the owner of St. John's Publishing, which guaranteed at least 6 issues. With a budget, Kubert was able to actually set artists' pay. It took Kubert over a year to set it up, but when he did, it was producing comics including The Three Stooges number 1 in 1949 by Norman Maurer, who had since married Joanne Howard, the daughter of the Three Stooges Moe Howard, along with Hollywood Confessions number 1 and 2. Kubert stayed active at DC as well, working on Foley of the Fighting Fifth and All-American Western, moving on after the Flash Comics was canceled. With his professional life on the uptick, Joe Kubert's personal life went the same way when he met Murray Fogelson at Bradley Beach, where he managed to ask both her and her friend Bobby out on dates. As it turns out, Bobby's mother had rented a room at Etta Kubert's boarding house on Bradley Beach, and both girls instantly found the young, muscular Joe Kubert attractive. On their mutual date, though, it became clear that Joe only had eyes for Muriel, and as a result, she and Bobby were not much friends afterwards. According to Muriel, she suspected Bobby's mother wanted her daughter set up with Joe as well. Muriel Fogelson was the daughter of Sam and Florence Fogelson, grocery store owners, and currently attending Rider College. Joe Kubert admitted that by their second date, he wanted to marry her, having introduced Muriel to his friends and comic book colleagues. However, a bump in the road occurred when he was drafted in the Army during the Korean War. And we will take a break for now, but when we return, we will continue on as Joe Kubert joins the war and in service in the U.S. Army, but also keeps going in his professional career and continues to be one of the comic book's great innovators. And now it is September 19th, 2019, time for the favorite comic book of the week, Spider-Man. Number 1 by J.J. Abrams, Henry Abrams, and Sarah Pichelli, which finds a news story that finds Peter Parker, an adult missing an arm, and also has a teenage son, Ben Parker, who's mostly raised by their Aunt May. How this all happens is revealed in the first issue, but I'm not going into spoilery territory, but let's just say this is an interesting new take on Spider-Man that looks to be a lot of fun. The father-son team of J.J. Abrams, yes, that J.J. Abrams from the director of Lost and Star Wars The Force Awakens, and his son Henry, ended up craft a fun new universe that shows a more depressed Peter Parker and a rebellious son, who, and let's just say, the Spider-Man mantle truly is a legacy with this. And of course, Aunt May's always great, as she really is a great mentor for both Peter and her great-nephew, Ben. The art by Sarah Pichelli is wonderfully dynamic and cartoony, and Pichelli is just a perfect artist for any Spider-Man comic, especially this one. And it looks to be like a fun new story with Spider-Man that I can't wait to read for the next issue, especially with that last cliffhanger panel. Also, sadly, on September 17th, we lost Bill Shelley, who is incidentally the biographer of the book Joe Kubert of Man of Rock. That was the basis for these upcoming Joe Kubert episodes. He was a great comic book fan and biographer. He did biographies on Otto Binder, James Warren, Harvey Kurtzman, and even won the Eisner for his biography on Harvey Kurtzman. Ironically, beating out the biographer who wrote a biography on Will Eisner. Great writer, and his books is not only the source, of course, for this one, but also the sources for many future episodes as well. And our heart goes out to his friends and family. And with that, we'll be concluding this episode for now. Also, I have to come back. Apparently, Weekly Thunder Adam was a little upset by some things I said about him being afraid of Blue Blaster and stuff like that. And I can report that when we went to Scare Ones this time, not only did he ride Blue Blasters, but he wrote it all by himself. Though I still got the higher score, though. Guess what are you going to do? But lots of fun between everyone else and everything like that. And of course, next we'll probably be doing the Netherworld, which incidentally is a fantastic haunt in Atlanta, Georgia. One of the best in the country, if not the best. And it's opening the 28th of September. Fantastic haunt. Definitely go check it out. And then till then, go out and enjoy yourself a good comic book.